I will be just like Elon was. Interestingly, I've done a couple of things with him in the last few days. We did a Google Hangout. And I noticed a bit of humility in Mr. Musk when he reminded everybody that, you know, this doesn't work all the time. We've got the threat of weather, although it looks a lot better than we thought earlier. It looks a lot better. I'm not a weather guy, so I can't tell you what they're measuring, but it looks much better. So the weather could stop us. They could have some glitch, some really minor glitch on the rocket, or it could be something that the payload guys say they're not ready to go, you know, at the last second or something like that. And then there are really bad things that could happen. But any of those are a part of this business. And so I would say, whatever happens, you should be prepared to relate your emotions, your feelings, your everything. If it's disappointment that it didn't go, you got to tell people that. Say, you know, man, I was hanging on the edge of my seat. My heart was beating. This is what I tell people, because I'm the emotional guy here. I hate not to launch. You know, it's when you're like when I was in shuttle, it was really disappointing not to go. You knew it was the right thing to do, but you're not rational at that time, and so it doesn't make it. Even though you know it's much better to be sitting on the ground wishing you were in space than on your way to space wishing you were on the ground because something really bad's happening. That didn't seem to come into your mind during launch.
Sir, I'm curious about the contract with SpaceX. I understand you have this is the first of 12 delivery flights they're going to do. What's the contract status of manned flights? So is that still?
We don't have a contract yet. That's a good question. All questions are good, but that one, hopefully, I can help people understand. The big difference between what SpaceX is doing tonight and what SpaceX has been doing for the last 5 years and what SpaceX is doing on the human side right now is tonight is a contract. It's just as you said. We signed on the dotted line. There are very stringent requirements and stipulations. You know, they can be held for breach of contract. We can be held for breach of contract. This is a legal flight. Everything we've done up until now has been done on what's called an I forget the formal name of it, but it's an other some kind of agreement, and it's called a Space Act agreement. It's a signed document, but it says we are going to provide limited funds to you, and then it's your responsibility to fill out the rest of it to make this thing work. We're not going to tell you how to do it. We're not going to lay stringent requirements on you, and you go do it. So that's the way it is right now for the crew development side, with some caveats. On the crew development side, they are on the. Let me go back to this. What they were trying to get to on the cargo side was tonight, a launch of cargo to the International Space Station. What they want to get to on the crew side is some night in the future or some day in the future when they'll be launching a crew. But they know, because they have it in hand, their human rating requirements for the vehicle. There are very stringent safety requirements on the vehicle. A lot more stipulations on the condition of the vehicle to meet our requirements before we'll allow an astronaut to get on board. A little bit different than cargo.
But there's no agreement between the government and Sierra Nevada or SpaceX or any of these other people to say you're going to fly, we're going to fly you in space with guys. People.
And they may go through the next 21 months under their individual Space Act agreements, come out at the other end, and they could decide, we've had it. This is too hard. Nothing's lost. They get to keep the money that they use because they got paid for certain milestones. No breach of contract, anything. They drop out any time, it's over, because they only get paid when they accomplish a milestone under a Space Act agreement. You know, we could decide at the end, good try, there's no way in the world you're going to meet our human rating requirements, and so you get a bad grade. You're not going to be one of the finalists. The other thing that's interesting to me is there are other companies that we did not select. They are eligible, and they can be just like anybody else to respond to the request for proposals 2 years from now when we say, okay, we now want to enter into a contractual agreement with somebody to fly our crews to the International Space Station. Anybody out there could take advantage of what they've seen SpaceX, Sierra Nevada, and Boeing do over this intervening period of time, can adopt anything that's legally adoptable, and bring it in and write a proposal, and if their proposal is really good, they could end up getting a contract. So that's the interesting thing about a contract and a Space Act agreement, the way we're working right now. The other thing we're going to do a little bit different that we did not do under cargo, because the only really stringent set of requirements for cargo is what we call the visiting vehicle requirements. Before you can go anywhere close to the International Space Station, then all the 5 partners have a set of restrictions, controllability, emissions, cleanliness, you name it. There's a whole bunch of things that have to be met that are called the visiting vehicle requirements. So when SpaceX flew their flight, they only had to satisfy the FAA in terms of launch, re-entry, and landing, but they had to satisfy the visiting vehicle requirements of the international partners, and that's pretty stringent. So not quite what they would have to do to carry a human, but it's a good indication, the fact that they can meet those visiting vehicle requirements, that they're serious, and they probably will be able to meet all the human rating standards and other things we'll have when it comes time to select somebody to fly humans a couple of years down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bolden, given the uncertainty in current federal funding, how is NASA coping with current contractual obligations for future space refueling missions?
Like this one tonight?
Yeah, like this
Those
one,
are budgeted.
and the future of manned space.
The big difference between cargo and crew is the contracts that we've signed are in the budget. So, unless somebody comes along in Congress and says, okay, we don't care, we're going to whack everything, and NASA, you're just going to have to drop those contracts. When you hear DoD talk, the Department of Defense, a lot of their concern is that their cuts under sequestration, for example, would be so extreme that they actually would have to terminate some contracts. We've looked at it. We don't think we'd have to terminate any major contracts right now. All those things are presently budgeted and budgeted even under a sequestration for us. So there's really no threat to cargo. Crew is different. We're running on a ragged edge right now. And you may know the president asked for $1 billion in the 2010 budget to develop commercial crew. The first time around, we got nothing. And then we got $406 million, I think, and now 500, and what we expect to get in the fiscal year 13 budget, maybe 525. But you got to remember, that's 3 years running now at half what we thought it would take to really carry out this program and deliver crew to orbit by 2017. I have to commend Bill Gerstenmaier. Bill, I think all of you have met Bill, or at least you've seen him in press conferences. The guy is not only one of the best engineers I've ever met, he is an incredible manager, both of people and resources. And he's really figured out some magic about how to get this thing going, how to keep us on track. But it's pressing all of us, to include the commercial providers. We've got to have more money, or we won't be able to deliver in 2017. And that's the point that we all talk about, is we want to make sure that Congress still remembers that what used to be of critical importance to them was closing, under no circumstances, elongating the gap between shuttle and commercial capability to get crews to orbit. We're right on the ragged edge right now of having to elongate that gap, and we don't want to do that.
Thank you.
So say that it does get delayed till after 2017, and space station's only set to fly till 2020. Then what?
Well, we'll continue to utilize Soyuz until there is no more destination to which to fly. But station right now, the agreement with the international partners is 2020, but we continue to talk with them. All of us have been engaged in engineering assessments of how long station could stay on orbit, and we've gotten to 2028 right now. So most of the partners agree that if we decided we wanted to do it, and we would only do it if, in fact, we were getting value from the International Space Station. We haven't demonstrated yet that we have not gone through all the enhancements that we want to do. We haven't had industry and academia and everybody else respond in the manner that we want them to, where station is fully utilized. and there's just, people are begging for a slot to go fly. We're not there yet. You know, we're still out, I say we, in the U.S. segment, we're using a company from right down here in Florida called Cassis. It's an arm of Space Florida to go out and try to develop the market for commercial products development and the like on station. So they're working with pharmaceutical companies, materials processing folks, students, everything. So, you know, if by 2018, 2020, we look and say, hey, this is going great guns, the partners will probably say, okay, let's go ahead and press. Let's take it out to 2028. Or they may say, let's take it out another 2 years, and then 2 years, and then 2 years. That makes it really hard if you do it that way. But we'd love to go to 2028. Yes?
Maybe late here, I'm so
No,
sorry,
no,
but
no.
I just want to ask you, how did you pick up the SpaceX as a contractor for this project?
How did they happen
yeah,
to?
I mean, did you have another companies?
Oh, yeah.
It was like that.
Even before I was the you know, I take credit for a lot of stuff, but I wasn't here when the concept of COTS, you know, when that concept was developed, that we would go to industry, allow them to make offers to produce a rocket that could carry cargo to orbit. That was done before my time. The budgeting for it actually came after I got here because the president said we need to do this. But competitively, space, there were, I want to say 6 or 7 companies, and the ones that were selected finally for COTS were SpaceX and Orbital Sciences. And Orbital was sort of a late entry because I think the original 2 were SpaceX and a company that used to be called out of Washington. No, they're no longer in existence actually. I forgot, but they could not meet the financial obligation for you know, keeping their COTS contract. The COTS contract
Saying
called
SpaceX was the lower prices for the project?
lowest price.
Best
That's
contract
why-
solution.
No, not necessarily. Anytime you look at any competitive process, anytime we look at several things. Price is one of them. In the case of Space Act agreements, for example, like for the commercial crew, you know, since it wasn't a contract proposal, then there was no one that came in and said, we bid this amount. They came in and said, this is the way that we think we can produce an acceptable system that'll be able to carry cargo to orbit. And we're willing to put in this much toward that effort, which means if you think it's going to cost $1 billion over the next 2 years to get where or in the next 5 years to get where you want to go, then we're willing to pay X amount of that $1 billion. And then all the rest of it, NASA has to pay. So while I'm not at liberty to say what the various amounts were that the companies paid, I don't know, to be quite honest. But I know if you go back and read Bill Gerstenmeyer's, it's a lengthy selecting officers report, and it's available. I think it's been published somewhere. But in it, he talks in detail as to why each of the 3 companies was selected. And I think I vaguely remember reading something from him that said, you know, Boeing was actually the lowest bidder, if you want to say price-wise. Boeing offered X% of the total price, and it was lower than any of the others. SpaceX may have actually been the one that offered the more of the largest percentage, but I'm not sure, to be quite honest.
I asked the lady something yesterday, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not.
Yeah.
I'm in a construction business, so
Yeah.
is that a chance that, you know, in the future, maybe 10, 20 years more? Because I learned that the private company has more tools, you know,
Yeah.
way better that the government cannot probably hold it.
Mhm.
Is that a chance that in the future they can be independent, like create their own space program?
Yeah. You mean
That's
a company like SpaceX completely independent of the government? Yeah, in fact, that's where they are.
Out of NASA.
If you look right now at where SpaceX is, I can't tell you where Orbital Sciences is because I don't, you know, they don't talk about it. But SpaceX, I think the other day, Elon mentioned the fact that he's got 12 contractual obligations to NASA over the next 5 years, but something like 20 or 30 additional contracts that have nothing to do with NASA or the government. So that's private enterprise, and that's
Actually,
him
pretty good at
him
this.
carrying cargo somewhere for other people. Probably Bob Bigelow as an entrepreneur who's trying to put some modules on orbit. It could be anything, and that's what we're trying to facilitate. You hear me use the term facilitate the success of a viable commercial industry. That means I want them to be completely independent of NASA. We don't have enough money to support a commercial space industry. Besides, if we're the only customer, or DoD and NASA are the only customers, that's not truly commercial. That's doing business with the government. Yeah.
It's something really good to have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I thought you were going to ask me, is there any chance that a construction company is going to be hired? But the answer to that is yes. If you look at plans for Mars right now, or if you look at what some of our international partners talk about in terms of the lunar, a lunar colony or something.
Yeah.
We are looking at. We have a whole branch of folk, some in Spain, some in Colombia, but most of them fostered around an effort at Ames Research Center in what's called astrobiology. And astrobiology is the study of microbes and stuff that grow elsewhere in the universe. And at Ames, they've actually developed some microbes using soil samples from some of the lunar soil samples to develop concrete. We use as the standard, I want to say it's Portland cement. And so far, they've actually produced from microbes, from bugs, concrete that is as hard, as stable as something that's been produced by a cement company. They also produce artificial meats, artificial food, but they start from a microbe, from a living organism, and they use genes and everything else to produce something that can be done. The reason we need to be able to do that is because the less weight you have to carry to Mars or the moon or somewhere else, the better off you are. So if we can just carry just the basic essentials and then get there and use the microbes, that's why one of the reasons that Curiosity is looking for any evidence of microbes, if they're there, we don't even have to carry the microbes. You get there, you use the microbes, you use the Martian soil, you can produce building materials, you can produce food, you can do everything.
Less dependent of the planet Earth.
Yeah.
So we can use it.
So there may be a
But
construction.
that's a very thing there.
Hey guys, we've got time for one more question.
Okay, you had your hand up, and then I'll take two.
Okay.
Jason will let me take two. So I'll take two.
I read somewhere that there was talk of building a spaceport here. Is that still on the table?
This is the world's, I don't want to say largest, I think it is. This is what people consider to be a spaceport. I know what you're talking about. There is talk about building a commercial spaceport on the property here. The state of Florida, Lieutenant Governor Carroll, I got a letter, Secretary LaHood from the Department of Transportation got a letter from her asking if we would consider the excess of property here on the Kennedy Space Center that we no longer need. The SLF, for example, the shuttle landing facility. Since we don't have a winged vehicle that lands anymore, NASA really has no need for an airport. And my desire would be to find someone who wants to preserve the SLF as an operational airport, spaceport. And the state of Florida, I'd be happy if the state of Florida would do it. When we land at Edwards Air Force Base, it doesn't belong to NASA. It belonged to the United States Air Force. So we landed on that. When I was still active in the astronaut office, I didn't fly out of a NASA airport. I flew out of Ellington Field in Houston, and that never belonged to NASA. It used to belong to the Air Force, then it went to the Air National Guard. Now it belongs to the city of Houston. So there is no need for NASA to own an airport. And the state of Florida said, hey, would you all be willing to consider accessing that property to us? Can't tell you what the answer is going to be. I can tell you what the administrator would like, but I don't make the laws, and it has to go. We'd have to get approval through Congress and all kinds of stuff. I am hopeful that we'll be able to do it. And I think they're also trying to get permission to build another launch site, strictly commercial, up toward the north end of the property. And my understanding is that's been through a lot of environmental battles before, so I don't know where they are, to be quite honest. And this is the last one.
Okay. So my son right now is 2.
Yep.
Do you think he'll be the right age to go to Mars?
Yes. Anybody who is younger than I am is the right age to go to Mars. And I'm 66. And the reason I say I could do it, you know, I could do it. But let's say, and I'm trying to be realistic. Realistically, because I think NASA can rise to the occasion. The president has told us he wants humans on Mars. And you got to remember what on means. On is a relative term. It may be, what we're trying to do is put together a plan to get humans in the Martian environment sometime between 2030 and 2039. How many years from now? That's 18. I could still fly. But it's a long mission, and I'm not sure that somebody that's hypertensive, you know, I have high blood pressure and I use medication. I'm not sure that flight surgeons would let somebody who's hypertensive go on an 8-month mission to Mars unless I signed something that said, don't worry about me, I'll be all right, which I could do. Yeah. But anybody, seriously, I think, you know, your son is ripe to piece of cake. He won't even be ready to fly yet when we go to Mars. He's still got a lot of education. Thank you all very much. You've been great. Enjoy yourselves tonight. Hopefully we'll get off. If we don't, then try it tomorrow night. Okay?